Good evening and welcome to our annual special report about severe weather, Project Tornado. I'm Alex Kirchner, and over the next half an hour, myself and the entire 13 Weather Authority team will be your guide to get you and your family ready for whatever this season throws at us, whether it's a few scattered storms or the next big outbreak. Tonight, we delve into the science behind severe storms and tornadoes, why they are getting more intense and more costly, what it takes to rate their strength, and what to know before storms even strike. Our goal, to get you prepared and not scared the next time severe weather threatens. We start tonight with a wild and early start to this year's severe weather season. We've already had several severe storms and tornadoes. Normally, we see most of our severe weather between April and June. Thanks to the warmest winter on record, we saw severe storms hit at times when we are usually worried about snow and cold. Wisconsin saw its first February tornado in state history on February 8th. A few weeks later, on the 27th, Rockford saw a new record for the warmest winter day ever with a high of 78 degrees. Now, the side effect of almost hitting 80 degrees during the winter, severe storms brought multiple tornadoes, golf ball-sized hail, and wind damage to northern Illinois. This all goes to show that no matter what time of year it is, if ingredients like warm air and wind shear line up just right, we can get severe weather. Climate change is pushing our seasons warmer, especially during the winter, and pushing our weather more extreme. So instead of looking at April as the start of our severe thunderstorm season, we may have to start getting ready for dangerous weather in early March. This is all a little over 1 year after the second largest tornado outbreak in Illinois history. On March 31st, 2023, in total, 18 tornadoes struck our viewing area, including one hitting downtown Belvedere. One person unfortunately was killed and 40 injured when that tornado hit the Apollo Theater. And it wasn't just us. This was the third largest tornado outbreak in U.S. history. 146 tornadoes hit 16 states, including ours. A perfect lineup of strong jet stream winds, a deep low pressure, high humidity, and very unstable air with plenty of wind shear created this monster severe weather outbreak. We won't always see outbreaks like this, but that day was up to a 4 out of 5 risk, which northern Illinois does see about 1 to 2 times a year. Meteorologist Claudia Olick goes into greater detail about the risk levels later in our special report. March 31st, 2023 was just the latest chapter in a long history of tornado tragedies in Boone County, a history that is not lost on that community. Meteorologist John Juergens talked to a few Belvedere residents generations apart who all have one thing to say: take tornadoes seriously.
Down the basement we went, and then the world came apart.
The EF1 tornado that hit downtown Belvedere last year was not the first or the strongest tornado to hit the city of Murals. Since 1950, 24 tornadoes have touched down in Boone County, including last year's tornado. 5 of them were significant tornadoes. The first, one that is all too familiar, an F4 that struck Belvedere 57 years ago. Dale Worth remembers it like it was yesterday.
It blew in the back of the house and the roof came right down on top of the back of the house. We were stuck in the basement for about 45 minutes. And pretty tough for a 9-year-old kid, you know. You know what's going on, but you don't really comprehend what's going on.
The tornado killed 24 people and injured hundreds more, damaging important landmarks throughout the city, including the Belvedere Assembly Plant, the Pacemaker Grocery Store, Highland Hospital, and the Belvedere High School. Since then, other destructive tornadoes have struck Boone County, including a rare January EF3 in 2008 that damaged the Edwards Apple Orchard in Poplar Grove, and an EF2 in November 2010 that heavily damaged homes in Caledonia. No lives were lost in any Boone County tornado since 1967, until last year's tornado.
It sounded like a vacuum cleaner. It didn't sound like no train I ever heard.
You could just feel something was different in the air, and it just like the temperature dropped, and then all of a sudden the wind started picking up, and then all of a sudden the sirens all started to go off.
The Erdelak family is newer to Belvedere.
The recent tornadoes in the area was the first kind of close experience that we've had with a tornado.
But they now know what it's like to experience something that many will not in their lifetimes. an experience that has now been felt by the younger generation.
Tornado sirens went off in my school once, but there wasn't actually a tornado. It just scared us a little.
Now, tornado sirens go off. Before we would not really think much of it because they're just the sirens that always go off that you've heard 100 times throughout your life. And so now when the tornado sirens go off, our kids get nervous.
Ask anyone who lived through these storms, and they will tell you that all tornadoes should be taken seriously.
If you think for 2 seconds you're immune to it, nope, you ain't. If it's meant to be, it's going to happen. But we came out of it better. We came out of it better. That's the whole idea.
The Boone County Museum of History has an exhibit on the 1967 tornado with items that were found in the damage and stories from so many more that lived through it. When we have a weather disaster like the 67 tornado or last year's outbreak, the cost to fix everything adds up pretty fast. Unfortunately, disasters costing billions of dollars are becoming more and more frequent. Meteorologist Claudia Olick explains how our changing climate makes these disasters happen more often.
The United States broke the record of $28 billion weather and climate disasters in 2023. That resulted in over $93 billion in damages. But how do you even get that number?
Analysis is done by public and private data partners to capture total direct loss, including both insured and uninsured damages to everything from homes to cars to infrastructure such as the roads, the electrical grid, to even time element losses like business interruptions due to damage.
These disasters are part of a growing trend of billion-dollar weather and climate disasters becoming more frequent and more costly.
We have more exposure, more people and assets in harm's way, particularly people moving to places like Florida or Texas. But also we have a higher vulnerability because much of the country doesn't have sufficient building codes. So that increases our vulnerability and our exposure.
Adam Smith, a climatologist for NOAA, says these factors contribute to the growing number of damages.
What we see with climate change is we're loading the atmosphere and the oceans with more energy. A warming atmosphere holds more water vapor, therefore can have more flood potential, more heavy rainfall and flood. In fact, we've seen more billion-dollar flood events in the 2010s decade than we saw in the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s combined, all inflation adjusted to present-day dollars. So that's not just an increase in exposure and vulnerability. That's also showing how climate change is indeed loading the dice and making some of these extremes much more frequent.
As storms may potentially become stronger and bring more intense impacts, it comes down to the combination of climate change, vulnerability, and exposure. It's important to recognize that much of the United States was planned, designed, and built during the 20th century, but now exists in a 21st century climate where there is more energy in the atmosphere.
There's an increased potential for extremes to challenge our infrastructure, a challenge we have seen even here in Illinois. Now, over the last 43 years, billion-dollar disasters have cost Illinois more than $55 billion. Now, that is the cost of nearly 116 homes in Rockford alone.
Northern Illinois is no exception to costly disasters. According to the trends mentioned and this graphic from Climate Central, we should expect more extremes to occur, bringing more costly impacts to Illinois.
The silver lining is that because many parts of the country have been impacted by many of these different extremes, there's the opportunity to learn about what regions of your community were vulnerable, maybe what regions were had some resilience already built in, so you can kind of assess where your areas of weakness and where your areas of strength are and try to build stronger, plan better, and just mitigate future losses because we know these extremes will continue to happen.
There is hope for our future despite costly disasters becoming more common. Designing our communities around more extreme weather will make us more resilient in a future with more extremes. Coming up on Project Tornado, we go behind the scenes, showing you the before, during, and after of severe weather and the science that goes into it. Our changing climate leads to not only rapidly rising temperatures, but also more extreme weather. I had the opportunity to talk to our partners at the Weather Channel on how our severe storms may be changing as the globe continues to warm. And we're going to start with the remarkably early start to our severe weather season. I mean, we had severe weather, thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings as early as February. So why are we seeing strong storms so early in the season?
Well, when you think about the distribution of cold temperatures in the wintertime, historically you have this sort of a broad curve where it gets colder and colder through the peak of the season and then starts to get less cold. Well, what's happened due to climate change is that we're still seeing cold outbreaks. They're just as cold as they were before, but that distribution is narrowing. So the season is being compressed and we're introducing low-level warm and humid air a lot earlier than we did in the past. And what climate projections show is that we will likely see more severe weather, much more severe weather in the month of March in particular, more in April, and probably about the same amount in May. So that's something that we can expect to see, that shift towards the earlier part of the season. And one thing I just want to follow up with is that we're going to see a transition from El Nino to La Nina this spring, and oftentimes when we see that transition, we do have an increased risk of tornadoes.
You bring up increasing intensity as well as frequency. So will our tornadoes, our severe weather storms, are they getting stronger on top of coming earlier in the season?
Yeah, it's a very tricky question because there are a lot of different parts to that. What we do know is that we'll likely see an increase in the number of days with severe thunderstorm environments. Just because the atmosphere is getting warmer and more humid, we're going to see more instability as a result of that. And we're also seeing, for example, an increase in the number of days with hail environments. And that probably has more to do with what's called the elevated mix layer than anything else. Because the western mountains don't have as much snow as they used to, that air is drier and warmer, and as it comes off the Rockies and then settles down into the plains in the Midwest, the cap is stronger than it used to be, and so when storms finally do bust through that cap, we see even taller storms and a greater risk for hail. So in the longer term, we're probably going to see more days with these severe thunderstorm environments, but whether or not that translates into an increase in intensity of tornadoes, that's more difficult to say because we're not sure if what has been demonstrated so far is more of a natural variation or if it does indeed have a link to warming.
Now, after severe weather clears out of the area, the cleanup process begins. It is the job of the National Weather Service meteorologists to determine what caused the damage through a storm survey. As meteorologist John Juergens explains, these surveys take plenty of time and resources into accurately identifying what happened.
They're calling this a confirmed tornado, a potentially damaging tornado. So that's what the National Weather Service calling this, a particularly dangerous situation. The morning after the storms, meteorologists from the National Weather Service go on the road, assessing the damage and determining what happened and how strong it was.
The wind speed that we estimate, it's actually going to be part of what we call the enhanced Fujita scale, which rates tornadoes based on damage, actually. So we need to see damage before we can put a wind speed to it. So we're not going to be able to tell you at the time of a tornado right now that it's, this is the category, this is its strength. We have to see what actually happened.
The EF scale goes from 0 to 5, where 0 means minimal damage to trees and buildings. Meanwhile, 5 is widespread destruction. Of course, most tornadoes end up on the weaker end of this scale, but there are specific indicators that meteorologists look out for.
If you're seeing just a few branches down, you can estimate the winds are this, but if you have larger branches down and maybe there's some rot inside, okay, so maybe it's stronger but not completely strong, as opposed to a healthy tree that maybe got uprooted.
It's not just the meteorologists that participate in the survey process. You at home can play an important role whenever severe weather strikes you.
The public can help in a lot of ways. Submitting photos to us or through social media is a great way. So if you have some damage, hopefully it's not too extensive, but send a picture with your location and what time you think it happened.
When assessing the damage, they put information on what is called a data assessment toolkit.
We have a tool that we use on our smartphones and tablets that we can actually upload those photos and actually make an initial assessment.
Once all of the data is in, they can put the pieces of the puzzle together and be able to tell how strong the tornado was, but it doesn't always happen within days.
From March 31st, 2023 actually, we probably spent about 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks, finalizing all the data because we ended up with 22 different tornado tracks, a lot of ground to cover and very extensive amounts of damage in a lot of places, unfortunately.
This survey information carries more real-world effects, including determining the outcomes of insurance claims, how long utilities and other infrastructure repairs will take, and future research on severe weather. Now, coming up after the break, you may have heard of the severe thunderstorm outlook, but what all goes into that forecast? Meteorologist Claudia Olick has the details. After watching our special report, head to WREX.com and click on the Project Tornado link. There you'll find a web-exclusive interview with a unique research group at the University of Illinois. They get up close and personal with all sorts of storms in order to learn about their inner workings. That story and much more about severe weather and tornadoes at WREX.com. When severe weather is expected, we may show you a map like this that has the outlook for severe storms. Meteorologist Claudia Olick explains the differences between these severe thunderstorm outlooks you see days before storms fire up.
On a day where severe thunderstorms are possible, you've probably seen your local meteorologist show a map like this. It's a map of your area with a color shaded over it. But what does it all mean? Whenever there is a potential for any kind of severe weather, the Storm Prediction Center issues these maps which present the severe thunderstorm risk for that day. These outlooks help not only give the meteorologists and other experts, but also the public an idea of where storms may develop, with each level signifying something different.
There are 5 different risk levels marked using a specific color and name. You have probably seen a green level 1 or marginal risk assigned to our area quite often.
On those marginal type days, we're not expecting very many severe thunderstorms, and the intensity of those thunderstorms is generally going to be kind of on the lower end.
Liz Lightman, a meteorologist at the Storm Prediction Center, explains that these are the days you may see a few severe thunderstorm warnings from your local National Weather Service office.
So as we move from a 1 to 2, we expect there to still not be a whole lot of severe thunderstorms, but maybe 4 or 5 storms could produce some hazardous weather in your area.
It's when you have an outlook of a level 3, 4, or 5 that we see a more concerning risk and potential for severe thunderstorms.
You're also going to have more intense severe thunderstorms. So, you may have hail. Instead of it being around 1 inch in those level 1 risks, you're looking at things approaching golf balls to perhaps baseballs.
Along with much bigger hailstones, you may also see more widespread damaging winds, and the risk for tornadoes may also be increasing, especially the risk for strong tornadoes in the higher levels. So what sets all these levels apart?
So really those numbers 1 through 5 are indicating a progressively increasing risk, both in coverage and also likely in intensity.
Next time you see your local meteorologist show an outlook, you'll know how intense the storms will potentially be and what kind of coverage our area here in northern Illinois will see based on the type of level that we fall under. Always remember to listen to trusted sources on any forecasts regarding severe storms. For more on these risk levels, Liz provided a neat graphic that helps break down these levels. And if you're interested, you can find that on our website and be even more informed on these convective outlooks.
After going through the science behind severe storms and the ways they are getting more extreme and expensive, we end tonight with the things you and your family can do to get ready for the next round of dangerous, damaging weather. Hopefully, a lot of these things are things you already know. It's always good to review these on occasion because we want you to be prepared and not scared when severe weather hits. First, remember, a watch is your heads up. It'll detail the general area of severe storms and when they're possible and the timing window for them. A warning is more localized, and that means take action if it's for your area. Always have multiple ways to get severe weather alerts just in case you don't notice one or your device isn't working at the time. A weather radio and the 13 Weather Authority app are good ways to get alerts for both your home and on your phone, so you are doubly covered there. And do you know where your severe storm shelter is? Put as many walls between you and the storm as possible. That's why an interior closet or a hallway, those are a good idea. Ideally, though, you want to be below ground and in the basement. And if you can't get there, try to get as low as possible. Think about where you spend a lot of your time outside of the home, too. Look for where you go at work, school, church, and at your favorite stores. And then stock up your shelter with necessary supplies. Hopefully you never have to use them, but bottled water, non-perishable snacks, first aid, and important medications and supplies for you and your family and your pets are good ideas. Also, consider copies of important documents. Finally, grabbing bike helmets and sturdy boots are good bonus options for added protection. And remember, you do not want to be in a car or a mobile home during a tornado, so get out of those if under a tornado warning. Head to your nearest storm shelter, or if you're driving, pull over and get into a ditch or a low-lying area. And review all of this info anytime severe storms threaten, and you'll be prepared for anything the weather throws your way. We hope all of this information will give you a better understanding about the powerful storms we see and help keep your family safe the next time they visit our backyard. If you'd like to learn more, we have a whole web page dedicated to tornadoes in severe weather. There's even an ebook for kids. So look for the Project Tornado link on our website, WREX.com. On behalf of Claudia Olick and John Juergens, we thank you for watching our special report, Project Tornado. Have a great night.